study what is meant by indirect taxes and what are the types of indirect taxes. Clear? How can we define indirect taxes? These are the taxes which are imposed on the expenditures and their burden can be shifted to others. These are the taxes which are imposed on the expenditures and their burden can be shifted to others. Alright? So their burden can be shifted to others. Its example is sales tax, or you can say general sales tax. This can be the example of indirect tax. Who is selling the products? The sellers or producers. But he will shift this burden on the consumers. Okay? Tax is imposed on the production of the goods or on the sale of the goods, but who is bearing the burden of this tax? That the consumers can be shifted its burden. They have to pay this tax. Part of this tax is paid by the consumers, or all of the tax amount is paid by the consumer. It depends upon whether consumers are inelastic in their buyings or they are elastic in their buyings. We studied the price elasticity of demand and supply. So now this is what we mean by indirect taxes. This is the definition. And we all know what is meant by total revenue. Do you know what is total revenue? That is price multiplied by quantity sold. We studied in our previous topic, total revenue means this is the amount of money received by the seller after the sale of the product. The revenue of the seller is actually the total expenditure of the consumers. For example, if I am buying something, so my expenditures are going to be the revenue of the sellers. So can I write the total expenditures of the consumer or the total revenue of the seller? They are both can be calculated by multiplying price with the quantity sold. Clear? Now the types of indirect taxes, they are two. One is that either this tax is imposed on the quantity sold or on the price of the product. Clear? So when this tax is imposed on the quantity, it is called quantity tax or per unit tax. What does it call? Per unit tax, or another name is there, specific tax. What it is? Per unit tax, quantity tax or specific tax. When it is imposed on the quantity produced, and when it is imposed on the price of the product, it is called value added tax. What does it call? Value added tax, or in a smaller short form we say this is VAT. Value added tax, or another name of it is ad valorem tax. Ad valorem tax. This is another name of this tax. Therefore, we have two types of indirect tax. One is called specific tax. Another is called value added tax or ad valorem tax ad valorem tax. Alright. So when this tax is imposed, what happens? It is imposed on each unit produced. This is the supply curve before the tax. When tax is imposed, what happens to the supply curve? It will shift leftward by the amount of tax. So when tax is imposed, supply will have a leftward shift. It is same like increase in the cost of production of the producer. As cost increases, supply will shift leftward, and now the tax is imposed, the supply will again shift leftward. The gap between these two supply curves, that is the amount of the tax. What it is? Amount. Now it is parallel. Parallel means each unit is having the same amount of tax. For example, rupees 20 per unit tax. Okay, or you can say rupees 10 per unit tax. Each unit, for example, if you are buying 1 unit of a commodity, you have to pay 20 rupees tax. If you are buying 2 units, you have to pay 40 rupees as a tax. So if you are buying 3 units, so 60 rupees is the tax. So as the number of units produced or sold, they are increasing, the amount of revenue will also be increased for the government. The tax revenue will be increasing. Now when we talk about equivalent tax, it is percentage of price. What it is? Percentage of price. For example, I say 20% of price, and the price is 100 rupees. So what is the tax now? Rupees 20. Alright. When price is 200 rupees, so what is the amount of tax? 40 rupees. When price is 1000 rupees, the tax will be 200. Did you follow? The rate of tax remains same. As price is increasing, the amount of tax will also increase. Clear? The rate of tax does not change. Now when we find a value added tax, now supply will shift leftward, but this will be a non-parallel shift. This is pivotal shift. At lower price, we have this amount of tax. As price is increasing, the amount of tax is also increasing. The gap between these two supplies again the amount of the tax, but the difference is that in case of specific tax, we have parallel leftward shift, and in case of value added tax, we have non-parallel leftward shift. As the price is lower, the amount of tax paid is less, and as the price is increasing, the amount of tax paid will also increase, because this tax is the percentage of price. Anything else you did not understand? Okay. Now come towards a diagrammatic explanation of specific tax when it is imposed on the production of demerit goods. Where taxes are imposed? On the production of demerit goods which are harmful to the consumers, then they are realizing. Okay? So in order to discourage the consumption of demerit goods, what government is doing? Government is imposing a specific tax. Okay? Now for simplicity, I am taking a very small amount of tax. Tax amount is rupees 10 per unit. Okay? On each unit produced, government has imposed 10 rupees as a tax. Now, before the tax, what is happening? This is the demand curve, this is the supply curve. Market equilibrium is the point where two forces of demand and supply, they are balanced with each other. So this is equilibrium before the tax, and this is the equilibrium quantity. For example, the price of the product is 50 rupees before the tax. Consumer is paying 50 rupees and seller is receiving the same amount, 50 rupees. Now when government has imposed 10 rupees per unit tax, what happens to the supply curve? It will shift leftward. So there is going to be the leftward shift of the supply curve with tax. So now where is the equilibrium? This is the new equilibrium point, where this is the P2 price and this is the quantity Q2. Now see over here, before the tax price of the product was 50 rupees. Now how much the price can be paid by the consumer at this point, at new equilibrium point? Can you say anything? We say this is going to be the price 55 rupees, which is paid by the consumer.
So 5 rupees the tax.
Yes. Instead of 10 rupees to be paid by the consumer, the seller has shifted 50% of burden of the tax on the buyers or consumers. Now after paying 10 rupees out of these 55, what is the leftover amount with the seller after the tax? That is this point. You can see this is the P3 price. This is 45 rupees. Now, as we see, tax is imposed. Out of this 10 rupees tax, 5 rupees is the price increase for the consumer. After the tax, consumer is paying 55 rupees, whereas the seller is receiving 45 rupees. Clear? So both are paying the tax. 50% of tax burden is on the seller and 50% on the buyer. So these two rectangles, they are showing us the tax revenue of the government. What does it say? The tax revenue of the government when tax is imposed. Now what are these two triangles? Do you know what are they about? We studied consumer and producer surpluses. This is the fall in consumer welfare or consumer surplus loss of the consumers due to tax. Previously they were enjoying this area. Now due to tax, less output is produced and this is the decrease in consumer surplus or the consumer welfare. And this triangle is showing us the loss in producer surplus due to the tax. Okay, so both consumers and producers are in the same market, they are living in the same society. So both loss in consumer and producer surplus, they are collectively called dead weight loss of the tax. Dead weight loss of tax to the society. This is the welfare loss due to the tax. Now actually these two triangles are showing us the tax incidence. Tax incidence means what? How the burden of tax is shifted or it is shared among the buyers and the sellers. In this case, the burden of the tax is equally shared, so the tax incidence is equal. Both are paying the 50% of tax. Alright? Now, who will bear the more burden of the tax? That depends upon the relative price elasticities of demand and supply. Now, I am going to draw another diagram to explain you. Now the demand curve is inelastic. What it is? It is inelastic. So before the tax, this is the supply curve. Now the tax is imposed. You can see consumer is paying the supper price. And which price will be received by the seller? Where this perpendicular is intersecting the previous supply curve. Here the students are making price will be received by the seller? First, you have to draw the perpendicular to see which quantity is traded after the tax. So where this perpendicular is intersecting the previous supply curve, you see, this will be the price received by the seller. You can easily see the upper rectangle is now greater in size than the lower rectangle. Or these two triangles, the upper triangle is larger in size than the lower triangle. Although these two rectangles are showing us the tax revenue, again I will take the numeric value. 50 is the price. Now consumer is paying 58, whereas seller is receiving 48. It means that 80% of tax is now paid by the consumer, and 20% of tax burden is on the seller. Why consumer is bearing more burden?
Because the demand is inelastic.
Yes, if demand is inelastic, then supply, more tax burden is on consumer. More tax burden is on the consumer. Alright? So consumers are paying more tax burden when demand is inelastic than supply. So if I draw the inelastic supply, what happens then? If I draw inelastic supply, then demand. Now see, supply is inelastic and demand is going to be elastic. Now the tax is imposed. Before tax, this is the market equilibrium. This is the price. Now after tax, consumer will pay this price, whereas seller will receive this price. Now which price is having more impact of the tax? You see, the seller is bearing more burden. This triangle on the lower triangle is larger in size than the upper triangle. So when supply is inelastic, more tax burden will be on the sellers. This is how tax incidence or tax burden is shifted due to the difference in the price elasticities or demand and supply. If I say demand is perfectly inelastic and now the tax is imposed, what happens? Before the tax, consumer was paying this price. Now after the tax, consumer is paying the full upper price. Now all the tax burden is on the consumer because the price elasticity of demand is zero. Therefore, all tax will be paid by the consumer. Alright? So when demand is perfectly inelastic, all tax burden will be on the consumers and seller is not bearing any burden. Or sometimes it happens that demand is perfectly elastic, now a tax is imposed. What happens? Now the seller will bear all the burden because consumers are not going to change this price. Demand is already perfectly elastic at this price. Their price is not going to be changed. Now all the tax will be borne by the sellers because consumers are highly price sensitive. If price is slightly increased, they will infinitely buy 0 unit. Clear? So in this case, the consumers will bear all the burden. In this case, the consumers are bearing no burden because demand is perfectly elastic. So suppose supply is perfectly elastic and this is the demand curve. Now the tax is imposed. Again, the consumers will bear all the burden. Seller is receiving the same price as before the tax. Okay? So when supply is perfectly elastic or demand is perfectly inelastic, the all tax burden will be on the consumers. Or if there is in between the relative values of price, elastic, demand and supply. So if demand is inelastic, consumers will bear more burden, and if supply is inelastic, then sellers will bear more burden of the tax. Clear? This is the end of specific tax. In our next class, we will study the value added tax, and then we will have, okay, I can complete the value added tax diagram. This is only a diagram, the rest things will remain same. Value added tax, I told you, this is going to be a non-parallel shift. Now I am writing this is the value added tax. For example, it is 10% of price. Now before the tax, this is the demand and supply. This is before tax equilibrium. Now when value added tax is imposed, supply will become non-parallel. In that case there was a parallel. Now after tax, this is the price paid by consumer, and seller will receive this lower price. These two rectangles are showing us what? The tax revenue, and these two triangles are showing us the deadweight loss. And who will bear the more burden? Again, it will depend upon the relative price elasticities of demand supply. The difference of two diagrams is that here supply is having non-parallel shift, and in that case there was a parallel shift. The rest of the analysis will remain same. In case of tax, consumer will pay per price, and consumer will pay per price, and seller will receive the lower price. Okay. So tax, indirect tax is specific, and value added tax we have completed today. In our next class, we will study the subsidies. After the subsidies, only one topic will be left over, that is about income inequalities, and then our syllabus about media that will be completed.